It's May 15th, 2012, and it is, it's close enough to 6 o'clock that we are going to begin. I welcome you all here tonight. If you're new to the council chambers, we have staff reports on the wall to your right, and I ask if you could please turn off your cell phones so that we don't have any interference in our audio equipment. With that, I'll formally call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hall. Councilmember
Here.
Moeller.
Here.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chilton.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here.
Could you guys switch, please?
It's the technology in this place.
It's good that you waited until we were live
Yeah.
worldwide for this.
How did Lewis get mine? It's because we look so much alike.
So don't worry about calling in. We've got it fixed.
We know who you are.
We know who we are. And with that, we are all present, and please join us, if you may, stand, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We'll move right on to closed session report. Do we have a closed session report from our last closed session?
There's nothing to report.
Thank you. Move on to adoption of the agenda tonight. Are there any questions, changes? I believe we did have a new printout of our agenda just for the change of our closed session item. Was that the only change?
It is, and also on item public hearing 9A, we're going to open the public hearing, and staff is requesting that this item, actually the applicant is requesting that item be continued to June 19th at 6 p.m.
So you'd still like us to open the hearing and then continue it?
Yes, please.
All right. Any other changes?
No.
If not, is there a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Public comment. Now would be the time if any members of the public would like to bring up an issue that is not on tonight's agenda. Now would be that time. Seeing no one interested, I'll move right on to the consent calendar. And are there any corrections or changes, or is there action to be taken on the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We're going to move right on to presentations. And this will be a presentation of a proclamation declaring May 20th through 26th, 2012 as National Public Works Week. And I invite our Public Works Director, Graham Wadsworth, to join me at the podium, please, so I can present to you and all of our staff the proclamation. Thank you for being here. This proclamation is for National Public Works Week. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, storm drains, streets, parks, public buildings, and emergency response. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services delivered by our dedicated public works employees. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. And whereas the American Public Works Association proclaims the third week of May each year as National Public Works Week to recognize the people who devote their professional time and energy to public works, contributing to our quality of life and making our communities a better and safer place to live. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, do hereby proclaim the week of May 20th through 26th, 2012, as National Public Works Week in the Town of Yountville, and I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions that public works staff make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Thank you on behalf of all of our public works staff.
I want to, of course, thank the council for their support, and I will share this with our Public Works crew and ask everybody to, if they see a Public Works guy out there in their orange shirts, to give an attaboy, because they've been doing a really good job with our parks and our streets and our facilities and all, so thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think I can speak for the council. We hear time and time again how great the town looks, the parks, the streets, and the fact that we don't have the number of emergency calls and issues. It really speaks volumes to the commitment and the hard work. So thank you, and to the whole crew. We really appreciate it. We're going to move on now to item 9, our public hearing for Summerston Wine Tasting Room, a master development plan amendment for 6490 Washington Street. And we are going to go ahead and, do you want to
Just
have
open
it?
a public hearing.
We don't even need any kind of staff report. So I'll just formally open the public hearing for this item. And can we just go ahead and accept a motion for continuance?
Yes, please.
I'd like to move that we continue this public hearing to a time certain, which is June 19th, 2012 at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. And just so folks at home know, that was a request for the applicant, or by the applicant, to continue that item. So we will continue that public hearing to June 19th. Item 10. You lost your pen. County of Napa, CAL FIRE, Fire Protection Agreement. I know we have a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. In the audience tonight with us are Gabriella Avina and Battalion Chief Parks. They're the folks a lot of us see and work with on the administration of our agreement. And what many people, the audience, may understand, Yountville Station 12 is, I believe, a model of an effective shared service. We have a unique arrangement where the town of Yountville pays 1/3 of the station costs, the county of Napa pays 1/3 of the cost, and the Veterans Home contributes 1/3. Even in that case, we still have to update our annual agreements, and in this particular case, we've concluded the discussions for the framework for our next successor 2-year agreement. Again, based on the council's budget philosophy and guidance, this is a maintenance of effort. In other words, the service level at the station is remaining the same, consistent with the direction. I'm very pleased to share with you that the overall net cost increase for the contract is 2.5% on average. However, it is comprised of an initial 5% increase in year 1 with no increase in year 2. In that, we took a little effort this year to update and modernize the agreement, cleaned up some language. I've outlined that in the staff report. With that, Gabriella's here, Mike's here. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them, and I'd welcome Gabby up to the podium to talk a little bit about the fire service delivery components.
Yes. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Dunbar and Council. Gabrielle Avena, Deputy Chief for CAL FIRE, Sonoma Lake Napa Unit. As Stephen pointed out, and I did want to reiterate, the agreement before you is truly, in our eyes, a model agreement of cooperative fire protection services. A couple things I wanted to share with you. Napa County has decided to fund and hire an assistant chief to serve as the Napa County Fire Chief. That is something that will be new to the agreement for fiscal year 12-13. And our hope is that that new position will help take some of the workload off of the CAL FIRE staff and truly dedicate a full-time chief officer to overseeing and managing Napa County Fire. And I think that that will benefit the town of Yountville. So there will be a new face in future years here. We'll be sure to bring them by and introduce them once that person is hired for the position. That is also something that Napa County Fire is doing, so that is not in the Yountville portion of the contract and not something that the town will be paying for. Also, in addition, Napa County we are working with the City of Napa and American Canyon. There's some information about it in the staff report, looking at a shared services model for our Fire Prevention Bureau, and that is something that is somewhat modeled after the cooperative fire agreement here. So we are working on a shared services model. We believe that you won't see a change in service level here, but we hope to create some efficiency within our fire marshal bureau at the county and Napa County level and the City of Napa and American Canyon level. That is all that I have for you. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? The Deputy Chief. I do just want to recognize the effort that we don't see here tonight, but that has gone on for, I know, hours and hours to negotiate the terms and to really make sure that the high level of service we've been able to have for years now is continuing. So I appreciate that from Battalion Chief Parks and yourself and everyone else that's been involved. So thank you. Certainly, as well as our town manager. I welcome anyone from the public who would like to make a comment about this, if anyone would like to. No? Seeing none, I'll return the discussion to council for either discussion or potential action. Any comments? Councilmember Moeller?
No, I'm ready to make a motion if there isn't any other discussion.
Are there any discussion, my folks? I did just want to acknowledge, and I'll do it on behalf of the entire council, I think I can do that, the collaboration that we have with all of our public safety crews. It's really, really impressive, and we value that very much. And so I'd like to thank our town manager, Steve Rogers, for his time and effort, as well as all of yours, to reach this agreement and continue the great service that we have here. We're very fortunate to have not only the station as part of our community, but also all of your crews and personnel that really embrace the residents of Yountville and the elementary school and are really part of the fabric here. So we appreciate that and look forward to it continuing. So thank you. With that, is there a motion to be had? Councilmember Moeller?
Yes, I'd like to move that we approve resolution number 3024-12, approving an agreement with the County of Napa CAL FIRE for provision of fire protection and emergency medical services to the town of Yountville for the period July 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2014.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Thank you once again. Moving right on to 10B, Town Hall seismic retrofit options. Staff report, please.
We're continuing the safety theme, or in this case, the lack of potential safety.
Shall we make sure that we have the Deputy Chief and Battalion Chief stay here?
I do think, yes, that's correct.
All right.
Of course, they'll
And our deputy, of course.
Thank you. Briefly, I just want to highlight a couple facts, then I'm going to turn it over to Graham to go into more detail. But what people may not realize is we're in a 1930s era building that is seismically unsafe. And right now we are not in compliance with the California Building Code that requires seismically unreinforced buildings to be engineered and made safer. So that's been a priority of the council. You've asked your management team to work on developing a game plan. As you may recall, several years back, we did a space study, needs analysis, and an initial overview, and we came up with some preferred alternatives, but those were at that point in time in 2010 numbers, approximately $5 to $7 million range. The council asked us and said, is there really just a minimum project? And what might that minimum project look like? So tonight, we're here to tell you, yes, there is a minimum project. We've identified that minimum project. We've consulted, again, with the same architects, because this is a historic concerning building. We've also consulted with structural, because obviously the seismic retrofit needs to have some oomph to it in order to work. And more importantly, we looked at a construction feasibility and cost analysis, and as you know, Pound Management was hired to do that. So tonight, we're going to hear a little bit about what that looks like. There's 3 items that we want the council to really take stock of and provide staff with some feedback. One of which will be, is this preferred minimum, is the minimum project your preferred alternative, so as we finalize the CIP, we know what we're aiming for. And then secondly is some feedback and direction towards how we might go about financing and looking at obtaining the construction, because I have good news and bad news. The bad news is there isn't $3.2 million sitting in the bank to pay for the construction estimate of the minimum project. The good news is we are making an improvement in our capital projects fund, and the revenue capacity looks reasonable that we could do potentially one of 3 alternatives when it comes to looking at financing. One would be a 100% 10 or 15-year debt financing of that amount. The second would be a hybrid option where we might look at a $500,000 or $600,000 down payment and debt finance the balance, again looking at a 10 or 12-year option. And the third is we slowly bank money and put it in the bank and wait till we have cash on hand. And if we squirrel away $300,000, $400,000 a year, not assuming the cost increase that the project would have over the duration, that could take anywhere from 10 to 12 years to have the money on hand. So I just want to make sure to let people know there are some options, but at this point in time, ultimately staff would need, we think the project has legs, but we can put it in the CIP, but until we secure and come up with a financing game plan, we really don't have the capacity to deliver this budget necessary to support the project. So that's just something that, obviously, based on your feedback, we have homework that we need to go do. And I have had some preliminary conversations with a couple different possible financial sources. And the good news is we're a financially attractive target, so that people are willing to do business with us. So I think we can secure that, should that be the direction you want to go. I would like Graham and the team to go over a little bit, because what we would consider the minimum project has some considerable elements to it, because simply reinforcing this building is not quite as simple as, let's come in and shear a few things up, because in order to do so, we have to move everybody out of the building temporarily. And we have to take the roof off and put the roof back up. So anyway, I'm going to turn this element over to Public Works Director, where he can talk a little bit more about why something as simple looks like it's a $3.2 million project.
So, and before we do that, if I heard you correctly, you were mentioning 3 points that you wanted to hear from us about, and I think I only heard 2.
You're correct.
The
I'm
third
sorry.
one,
I got
is it
so excited.
The design component?
That's correct. Staff is recommending that we use a design-build approach as opposed to a traditional design-bid-build. And we'd like your feedback on that. We believe that the design-build approach allows us greater flexibility on the selection of the ultimate contractor, because we're able to legally focus more on the qualifications, work experience, less on just accepting the lowest bid. So as you might imagine, your staff's a little more sensitive to that in this environment, and we think, given that nature, the extra work up front on that approach, even if it has a little bit of expense, is probably a more practical. But those are the 3 things that we'd like some feedback and direction on. So thank you for keeping mathematic counts for me tonight.
You're welcome. With that.
All right. Good evening again, Mayor Dunbar, Council. As you recall, ARG was hired to do assessment of the facilities and had some ideas for retrofitting the building, adding a new part of the building where the annex is, and that was fairly expensive. So back in December, you approved us to hire Pound Management and ARG under contract to do more analysis of the building, do some preliminary design work, and try to figure out, okay, what's the best option of, there were 3 options looked at for retrofitting this building, what's most cost effective, how much would it cost, and then also the procurement process. So what they've come up with and what's in your staff report is just a few of the plan sheets that shows a layout of what the building could look like, and also a cost estimate of what are those, most likely costs. There is some contingency in here, and also in the staff report are some of those big ticket items like temporary moving out of the building, replacing the annex with a new annex. This building's over 30. The double wide is over 30 years old. Replacing the roof. So essentially, what we've come up with is there would be a excavation around the footing inside of the foundation under the building, and then they widen that concrete footing, and that would be the foundation. Then there would be wood columns and essentially a wood wall frame built inside the building. So not just around the walls, the whole building. And then that would be connected up to the roof. And then all the tiles would be removed, and then plywood sheeting would be nailed onto the roof, so that the roof would move as one piece. Currently, right now, it's just a bunch of slats. It's very heavy with the tile. But by connecting the roof to the wooden frame and the frame that's sitting on the concrete foundation, then we'd have a much stronger building that would meet current codes and would hold up an earthquake much better than the current building. So before you tonight are the cost estimates and preliminary plans. We just want to get some direction from you on our capital improvement program, which will be coming back on the 23rd to talk about. Do you want us to put money in there for CIP? How would you like us to finance this project? Because we don't have $3 million in the CIP budget, the Capital Projects Fund. And then would it be acceptable to go forward with, for the first time for the town, a design-build contract? And this has been done on fairly large government buildings, some highway projects. And that this is a process where we would have a project manager like Pound Management, but then we would go and hire a company that would essentially have a team based on the designer and the contractor working together to put the design together, move into construction without going through the bidding, the bidding and awarding process. So this would be new for the council. Usually what happens is the plans come back, like we did on the resurfacing project tonight. Then we go out to bid, and we come back, you'd award the contract, and then we'd have the pre-construction meeting and go forward. So it's a little different process. Oliver Dibble is here tonight from Pound Management if you have any questions, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Does the council have any questions at this point? No? Councilmember Hall?
Yeah. So this is a big project, obviously. If we were to pursue something like this, does this get us to a point where we can tolerate, or the building could tolerate, an earthquake of X magnitude, X being whatever number you're about to tell me, or what is that number?
Right. The code essentially says we're in a seismic zone, and then we would design the structure to that seismic code requirement. So it would stand up to an earthquake. Now, buildings, the California seismic code requires that the building stay standing after an earthquake. It doesn't mean that you won't have to come back and do a lot of repairs. It's just for life safety so that it doesn't collapse in an earthquake. But there may be still extensive damage because the cost to make it not even damaged during an earthquake would be far more than $3 million.
Right, and that's kind of the where I'm going with my question is, what does this buy us? It's a big number. What does it buy us? Up to 7.1, 8.5, 10.9? I mean, that's what I'm trying to sort of fragment, and I don't know that I'm necessarily going to get an answer other than to say, I'd hate to take town money, spend a bunch of money, and then the first time a 4.1 rips through here, have the thing roll over. But so we don't know that number necessarily. Other than the thing will stand up.
I mean, a 4.1 should be fine. And there've been earthquakes in Yountville before, and it hasn't fallen down. But there's what they're saying is if a earthquake similar to Loma Prieta happened near to Yountville, then that could cause extensive damage to the building. It could collapse possibly. So that's what we're trying to prevent. And this would be a much better. It would stand up much better after it's been retrofitted than it would before.
Okay, that's my only question.
Councilmember Mueller?
I'd just like to follow on with that. So, I mean, we kind of have a fairly solid number to look at here because it's 3.2 million. But, so somebody must have come up with this number based on some design and construction costs based on what kind of seismic activity that would be expected in this area, lateral movement, up and down movement. I mean,
Correct.
I definitely would like to hear something about what kind of zone are we in? And, there are probabilities that people do kind of assign to certain different dirt and stuff like that, so, in the area we're in. So how did that, what is that information, and how did that lead to a fairly low number? Because we might be in a not such a bad zone, or is it a pretty high number because we're pretty seismically unstable? I mean, I don't have a sense.
Let me try to help the council. We have a building that by definition and nature of the construction style is not seismically safe. It has little to do with the zones, little to do. What we have done is brought in the architecture and a structural engineer who are experts in renovation and seismic restoration. So they've looked at some different approaches on what's the appropriate nature of the work given this building. So it's a hard one to say that it's X, Y, and Z. It has, it doesn't have so much to do with the nature of the zone that we're in as much as it has to do, frankly, with the nature of the construction of this building. This is what's known as a clay hollow tile constructed building. So that's what drives the retrofit. And I'll be perfectly honest, what's going to drive a significant portion of this project cost has to do with the temporary relocation of staff and all of those things. You're looking at a project that ultimately because of the shear wall and the construction when it goes in, we have to rewire the building. Now, as most of you know, since we had failed electrical wiring, that's not necessarily a negative, but because when you move all those outlets, we're also going to have to replace all of the windows. So those are the types of things that start adding to what on the surface, if you just said, well, what's the structural engineer tell us we got to come in and do? That's probably only about $800,000 on this project. But then you got to live with the building after it's done. You got to resurface the wall, put the electrical back, those types of things. So that's why I think you're very correct. We have a very detailed cost, including allowances for moving, a purchase of a modular, reuse of that modular, because many people in this community may not be aware that Town Hall consists of a building, the former three-room school, and a double-wide modular that started its life as the Clinic Olay Clinic. It is on its last leg. So our project at 3.2 also includes a $500,000 contingency, just because the nature of these projects. So that could theoretically, if everything's good, but we won't know that till we get in and conclude it. But that's why I say this is a very complete project. It's not a, there'll be, some new look to everything because you got to paint walls, do all those things when you do it. But, it's designed to meet California earthquake standards. And that's why I appreciate the intrigue, but it really has the fix has more to do with the nature of the building than it does the level of the zone that we're in, if that makes any sense.
What you're saying is it doesn't matter the magnitude of the earthquake. Any earthquake has potential of doing significant damage because of the type of building we're in.
That's correct. And I would also say it could be a very small earthquake centered in Yountville could be very devastating to this building, or a larger earthquake 10 miles away. We don't know.
Right.
And that's the other thing is some of those folks aren't going to come out and tell you that, okay, you've now built a building that should withstand an 8.4 and then it fall. But I will try and get a better answer for you on some of that seismic component, and maybe Mr. Zerko can put some background, or if Oliver has something. But that's just to kind of give you a flavor. What we're really trying to address is the fact that we technically are in violation of the California Building Code, and that's why we have to have the notice on our building that says, you've seen it, notice you're in a seismically unreinforced masonry building. Some communities have actually passed ordinances that have a strict deadline for when these buildings have to be completed. Ironically, the town has one of the last buildings remaining in Yountville to be reinforced. Most of the privately owned buildings have completed their renovations. So we're a little behind the time.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, you had questions with staff?
Yeah, thank you. You made a comment, and I think it's worth repeating, about we looked at other alternatives and they were expensive, because people have been referring to this as expensive, which it is, that really doing an overhaul of this building, taking care of the modulars, et cetera, would be, I think one of the estimates was like $12 million. Was that right? I mean,
With the new building, right?
So the difference between $12 million and $3 million is still, that's a heck of a lot of money. So I think it's worth kind of remembering that in the context of what you all have done, which is try to bring a minimum project. Can you explain to me just a little more of the design build process as opposed to the design bid build process? And my assumption is, when I look at the community center drawings and they're this thick with detail of every little thing, or at least it's supposed to have that, that you do a more general design in this kind of a situation, and you work with the contractor on a very proactive basis on the details as they come. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So what you essentially have a team that's working together instead of a contractor saying, oh, I need a change order, and the engineer saying, well, we have to go redesign it, so pay us more money on the design. And so it's usually less adversarial relationship. You can go faster, and it can also be less expensive, because if the designer and the contractor are working together, they're solving problems together, and so you usually don't have as much paperwork or process or change orders and things like that. So there are advantages to design build. The concern that we have is that this being a $3 million project is on the lower end of most design build projects, usually around $10 million or more. So I've done some checking, some research. It's probably going to be attractive to contractors and designers to work together on this. But I don't know if all of you have anything else you want to add on design build.
Wasn't the bike path, wasn't that designed? Was that designed?
We hoped to do design build, but the state didn't.
Caltrans problems on that.
Yes,
Okay, I
Caltrans
won't
said
bring
we
that
couldn't
up
do
then.
that.
The contingency, which I certainly looked for, $500,000, that's almost 15%. Well, it's over 15%, I think, if I backed it up a little bit. Is there a higher contingency in design build because you haven't gone to the detail, or is it more because this is an older building? I'm not complaining at all.
Yeah.
But what's the reason for that?
Really, it's because we're in the phase that we're in right now is very preliminary, so we essentially don't have detailed design drawings. The further you get into the design, the more you understand, and you can break down your costs. So when we're at 90% design, we can maybe use a 10% or less contingency. So because we are so early in the design process, we used a higher contingency.
Okay. How will the temporary relocation look? Is that putting stuff in the back parking lot or somewhere else in town, or what's the plan?
Well, you may recall a discussion recently about limited office space in town. Maybe a surprise. We don't own the back parking lot. We only own a very small portion of the back parking lot. Our relocation plans will consist of using the existing Clinical A portable adjacent to this building while it's renovated, and placing the modular on the front lawn, and doing the ADA accessibility to keep that, and then we will restore the front lawn. The good news is it does let us put in potentially a model drought-tolerant landscaping when we do that. But, I mean, we've looked, and I have to be honest with you, that's been a challenge for us, because in a perfect world, we would prefer to rent temporary space, move everything, and there just isn't. And we didn't think relocating town offices for 4 to 6 months in the city of Napa was appropriate. So,
So you talked about reuse of that modular?
correct, we will
Would that-
purchase the modular,
Yeah.
and then when we're ready to move from the front lawn, that modular will stay, and we will dispose of the 30-year-old modular.
And then move it over?
Correct.
Okay,
In the same place.
thank you.
So I'm seeing a 10% contingency listed here, 329,000. Am I reading the right chart here? Owners
For design and
contingency?
construction.
So there are a couple different contingency
I'll
levels,
ask
is that what we're talking about?
Oliver to explain the
Yeah.
two contingencies?
Town management.
Hi, and if you could just raise that microphone up just a little bit for me, great, thank you.
Good evening. There are two levels of contingency, and if you look at the staff report, towards the back is the preliminary construction estimate, and towards the bottom of that is a 10% contingency built into those construction numbers. Those numbers then are moved to the master project budget, and there's additional contingency in there. There's owner's contingency of 329. So it's in two places.
234 plus 329?
Yes.
Okay.
Great, okay, that's where we get the 500.
Yeah.
While I have you up there.
Yes, sir.
My question is 4.04, alternates,
Yes.
730,000 and change. Could you describe what alternates means?
Yes. The alternates that were developed in meeting with Mr. Rogers and Mr. Wadsworth. The first one is the replacement of all the exterior windows. These existing wood windows are in poor repair. They don't operate properly, yet they, especially the large ones, form part of the historic character of the building. So right now you have windows that operate in 3 levels, and the hardware actually is connected so that when you open one, you open all 3. What we're proposing to save a little bit of money is to have the top 2 sashes fixed and just have the bottom one operating. Those windows and the exterior trim, the brown exterior trim, tested out with a very high degree level of lead. So they have to be removed carefully and using certain procedures so that doesn't, it just makes it a little more expensive to do. The second alternative is window coverings, and that's shades and blinds and stuff like that. The third one is the annex modular replacement, and that's actually buying a new modular. That's $100,000. And then the final item, actually the next item is an emergency generator. And that is kind of as a function of trying to get this facility to operate in emergency mode. It won't be an emergency place of refuge, but it will have power when power goes out. And the last one is replacing restroom 106, which is the one back there. These walls that we're building are 6 to 7 inches thick, and those 2 sets of restrooms are already barely on the edge of being compliant. In fact, this one is not compliant. And when you take another 6 inches out, you lose all the space. So those are the alternatives.
Alternative 3?
For,
The bottom?
oh, yes, of course. Alternative 3 was developed to provide some expansion of bathroom capability for public people. We're taking one of these restrooms away. We're taking one of the 2 restrooms away at the end of the corridor, the staff bathroom and the other one. And the idea is to recapture the space where the wooden deck is and add 2 restrooms in that location plus a hallway for storage and access.
That would be between Town Hall and the annex.
Right. So these are they're conservative alternates. They've been priced in a conservative way.
And so these are kind of miscellaneous, some of which may be applied, some of them may be changed or have already, you said, multiple choices that will be determined.
Yeah, and you could describe them as being nice to have. Or maybe you pay for draperies from some other budget. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that.
Okay.
Like I say, at this point, we have evaluated, and I can share with you a few, that the windows simply will not make it through the renovation and being able to do that. We've got some, the town clerk has a window where you can put your finger through it. I'm not talking about the window, I'm actually talking about the molding. So we just need to do it. They're also not energy efficient. You may recall a couple of years ago when we were doing the ESCO project analysis, we looked at, and it was recommended at that point in time that we replace the windows. However, because it was a California Energy Grant requirement, there was a cost-return ratio, and unfortunately, due to the historic nature of the building, the specialty cost of the windows did not meet the California Energy Commission's return on investment. There is one other significant cost component that I need to share with you. This level of renovation requires the installation of fire sprinklers. So you have approaching $200,000 of the project cost is the requirement to install sprinklers. And that's just our own adopted code requires when a building and a property improves more than 50%, they need to install, and we're not compliant, and we have to be compliant with our own laws. So that's why this project starts growing a little bit. And again, the difference is why you see the annex modular as an alternate. It would be less expensive just to rent the modular for the 4 to 6 months, although we would spend about $200,000 doing that in the outright purchase. It's only $100,000 more to purchase it outright and own it than it is to lease it for the 4 to 6 months. So that's when we try to look at some of these things. And the alternate category may be a little bit misleading on some of them. The generator, again, is one of those things. Right now, the town owns a portable generator, and we can plug it in at Community Hall, or we can plug it in here. We cannot plug it in both. And if we're trying to use Community Hall as an emergency shelter for heating, cooking as a shelter, then we don't have the ability to use it here to power the building as the source of the local government entity leading the response to the emergency. So that's just part of our challenge when we're looking at it as far as an incremental cost to allow us to have a better emergency response overall in the community includes approximately $100,000 for building a generator into this. But again, we could strike that, so that could bring it down to 3.
Okay. Other questions about the staff report at this point? Councilmember Dornbecker?
Yes, please. I was wondering, was the status of this building, when we were considering the community hall, was the status of this building known at that time, that it was, seismically unfit?
I would have to say yes.
And were there any conversations at the time about, possibly planning some additional office space in that for this kind of contingency?
I wasn't here at that point, so I don't want to offer a wrong answer. I do think that, from what I understand, the focus really was on improving the community center and the recreational and meeting community needs, not as an office facility.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moeller.
I want to just kind of go back to some real basic questions, like who's doing what and where did all these numbers come from? So I have drawings here from the architectural firm. I can't really read it. but
ARG.
ARG did something, and it looks like we already paid for that because that was in some earlier approvals.
December.
Okay.
Right.
Then somebody has generated the preliminary construction estimates.
That's us.
Okay,
Town
so
management.
do you just look at these architectural renderings and come up with these numbers? Is that where they come from?
Yes.
Okay, so they're estimates.
Yes.
Okay. Then there's another page that is attachment 1, and this is like all the fees and extras and.
This is the soft costs and the construction costs are also there. If you want
So
to,
these are
I'll walk you through that if you'd like.
No, I just need a high-level roadmap, so
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how,
Right. So
all
the-
this
the
came to the
soft
3.2.
costs- The soft costs of design and engineering are in there. The soft costs of permits and utilities are in there, and we use the values that the town would charge. So the town is charging itself, because we didn't want to be short shrift on that. The construction costs, which are in the other sheet, are also in here, in section 4. Then we have a small amount of fixtures and equipment.
okay, you're way ahead of me.
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to have to take a few minutes, I promise I won't
problem.
bore everybody here. So you're talking about this, attachment 1 is the soft cost. So we are going to charge ourselves a lot of these, like under permits and utilities, or just in different areas, we're charging ourselves fees, so
Correct.
that adds to the number, but when we charge ourselves fee, it goes back into the pot, right?
Not necessarily, because, again, when you look at attachment 1, it leads to the total project cost of 3.2. Design is incorporated in that. As you may recall, a project like this, we don't have in-house inspectors. We have third-party contracted inspectors, which is why we have to charge the project for the inspection costs and the building permit. And that's also consistent with the council's policy, just like we pay our own water and wastewater bills. We always charge ourselves for a project in most cases. So those are what you see in the permit section under, we're not charging ourselves any land acquisition costs.
So we're charging ourselves, or you're charging yourself for Rob to inspect during the course of construction and to review the plans.
Well, and then also on the water connection fee, we pay for irrigating the parks out of the parks operating budget, and that revenue goes into the water enterprise fund. So there's a fire, because we're putting in fire sprinklers, we have a new connection to the water system, so there's a connection fee which we would charge to a developer. So we're essentially just charging ourselves what we would at normal business be charged.
Okay, all right. So then these direct costs are estimated and as well as these. So we still have a pretty soft number. So the next step then would be to take these and look at financing once a ballpark, we'd go out for ballpark financing, and then something real would happen after that in terms of how much is it going to really cost? Would that be the next step?
Right. So if we move forward with the design build process and hire a consultant, then they would do a more detailed design of the project and a more detailed cost estimate, and then we could bring that back to the council to say, okay, this is where we're headed, and this is what we think it's going to cost. So based on the contingency, we think the contingency go down, the price would stay about the same. But if gas prices go up or wood prices go up or down, that can cause these costs to change over time. So these are based on the current cost estimates, the current economy, that kind of stuff. So it is just an estimate because we can't foresee what it's going to cost next summer to build it.
So there'd be a designer that we haven't really identified, and then a construction company we haven't identified.
Correct.
They would actually, let me clarify, that's a good point. They would come together as a team. So the team would respond to our request for qualifications.
Right.
And then we would outline, and that process would include all of the background material. We have a ton of reference material, soil borings, this detailed study from the Mr. Zerko, the architectural design, all of that gets put into, probably an attachment is going to be this kind of thick. And then what we would do is, part of that request for qualifications, we would ask for them to provide a range and, a response in numbers in terms of their approach to how they would go about delivering the project. And then we would enter into a contract with them. Council would review and ultimately select. So what it is that part becomes a bit similar, if you will. You're familiar with, we hire a separate design firm, then they go out, and then we go out and bid a project. What we're doing is sort of combining the two, and then we negotiate that's brought back to the council, and we'll have a known price. One of the things about these things is that, we're going to get a finished product. We have an expectation of what our finished product would be, and that combination of consultant, designer, contractor are going to deliver that finished product for X price. So these numbers, we believe, are reasonable. They're based on construction standards within the industry for the level of work, and we have a reasonably healthy contingency just because of the unknowns that we have going in. But yes, if, by happenstance, if we go through this process, Councilmember Moeller, and the number comes back at $4 million, we have no obligation to continue. We say, oops, and we don't authorize. That's just like we do on but I do want to echo that we do think that with the background and our focus on knowing what we want as an end product, we should be able to get a pretty good number. And we also may get some firms that typically locally don't respond to government projects because they're not interested in the low bid approach. So this lets us put more emphasis on screening and the criteria for the selection of the firm that's going to be the lead on the project. So what you really usually end up with is the contractor, in this case, is likely to be the lead with a design firm component. And they work as a team, not as, I don't want to dwell too much on the community center, but there what you had is an architectural team did all of the design work. Then we set out all of those things, and then when somebody doesn't, they want to know, where do I nail the hole? The architect didn't tell me where to put the hole. So under design build, we don't get involved in the method of delivery. That becomes upon the team. So that's where we think, one, we should end up with a better quality project for the same price or perhaps even lower.
Okay. Vice Mayor, you got a follow-up
Well,
question?
I just wanted to ask a specific question based on what you just said. And I guess it has to come with the ideas, and maybe it's what Councilwoman Mueller is saying. When we get to a point of sort of a little bit higher level design, we're not going to get a full bid style design, and we say, yeah, you know what, this $3.2 million, we're very comfortable with that, that's the number. Do we have a contract with a contractor that says, I will deliver this for $3.2 million, or not?
That's where we will end up with when we go out with the request for qualifications. That becomes the end product of that process.
Okay. So there's still the, let's call it the safety of, they're not going to come in and say, well, when we really looked at it, this needs to be $3.8 million.
We will find out, because that's how we,
But I'm talking about after we have selected them and are moving forward.
This is where we actually had an extended conversation today with our friend here from the town attorney's office. One of the key elements that the council will approve will be this request for qualifications. In that lays out the process. That lays out the legal expectations, how they have to respond, and we get into some of that. So we've just started that process from a preliminary standpoint, and if the council provides the direction, we will work in earnest on developing the full request for qualifications, and then that will come back to you for your review and approval, and then after that, then we will launch it out into the construction world for a response back. And then typical of the existing process, you have the ability to say, none of these responses look good to me, because, one team comes back and says, well, I don't know where your 3.2 came up. Our number is 3.8. We won't touch it for anything less. But, we will get a guaranteed price, or, the caveats will be identified so that we understand what they are. So that's the process that has to be developed in that request for qualifications. I don't know if Andrew wants to add anything.
I just wanted to follow, just a reminder to everybody, we're not making a final decision on anything tonight.
That's
We're
correct.
kind of starting the process potentially tonight. So saying that this plan sounds good doesn't mean that we're locking into a $3.2 million project and are committed to that and have an architectural firm lined up and a construction firm lined up. So this is really almost more theoretical still in that early stage, giving the green light to move forward with the rest of it. And
We're looking for direction on,
Right.
Are you okay with proceeding with the design build process? Are you okay with us putting money in the capital improvement program budget for a $3.2 million project or not?
Right. Okay. Councilmember Dornbecker, I think you had another question?
I have one last question, and that is that I see that there was a hazardous materials report in February by Clancy and Associates, and I was wondering if that is a final hazardous materials report, or if there is a possibility that there are further hazmat materials that you might find.
It is a final report in that Mr. Clancy went all throughout the attic, all throughout the underfloor area. He sampled interior finishes, he sampled exterior finishes. If there's something that's concealed that needs to be revealed, then that will be dealt with as it's brought to light. But right now, we have not only the report, which was part of Phase 1, but we have the abatement of what was found in Phase 2.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other specific questions, or can Councilmember Mueller another question?
Yeah, one more. And this is a bit hard, but it's important because I know we're also going to give you input about financing. So let's just, make some assumptions that it would proceed down a design build, and we could come in close to this number. Can you give me a ballpark about when we'd really need to have this financing available? And the reason I'm asking that is because of, the hybrid model you propose is only like 10 or 15, about 15% down payment. If it's going to take longer, we can talk about other money. So what's a ballpark that we might be ready to go?
We would need, well, really, I will say, that's the council's determination. You
I
can
know,
tell
but
us.
just guess. Are we talking nothing can happen for 3 years, or maybe something could happen in a year?
The current preferred approach from staff would be to finalize the process and be ready to begin construction at the conclusion of the elementary school year next summer, and then try to minimize the construction impact on the school. So we would need our funding in place by about this time next year at the latest.
Okay, then one last financing question.
Actually, I think we're talking about in the winter, because we still have to get to construction with all the permits. So we're thinking about 6 months from now, we'd want to get the financing secured.
Summer of 2013.
So we can go to construction in June of 2013.
And so with the financing, the typical ways that government would go, I've never seen, and I don't know whether people don't use it, or if it's not provided, so that's my question, a early payment option.
We can secure that, so if.
That's not unusual to find.
We're going to be
people who
looking at
finance.
several different, and actually, it depends on the model of the structure. Some entities, especially if it's a rate revenue, they actually want it fixed in. We certainly can have an early payment, and that's why I said I'm looking at something that is more than likely a 15-year approach rather than a 20 or a 30, already shrinking it. But certainly when we go to meet with people, we can say we want something, let's say we can sit down with them and say, all right, we're 5-year, but we want ability to repay at 5 in full if we've got we can certainly sit down and discuss those terms in more detail.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about the staff report specifically at this point? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll invite any members of the public that would like to comment about this item to do so now, if you'd like. Seeing none, I'll move on. And I know that our town attorney was possibly interested in making a comment. Did you want to add anything at this point?
Nothing major to add, except that this would provide a little more control over the end product as well. You wouldn't have you'd have much less haggling between the design professional and the general contractor, because they'd be working hand in hand.
And I'll ask you this question then to follow up on that. What is the recommended oversight, either by the town and or by the council? Would there be an oversight committee that monitors this, similar to how we were operating with the community center?
This appears to be a much smaller project than that, and because of the general footprint of the building wouldn't be altered much. It is the council's desire to have such a hands-on approach, certainly have that, but I don't believe that that's been considered as part of this project.
Okay. Any other questions related to the town attorney? Okay. So seeing no other members of the public, I'll invite the council to continue deliberation. Reminder of the 3 key components being asked for direction on are is this minimal or minimum alternative even acceptable to us? That's a very fundamental question. Is there a preferred finance plan or recommendation for the $3.2 million cost? And are we comfortable with the slightly unique, for us anyway, design-build process? So with that, Councilmember Hall, comments?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for the report and all the insight. I appreciate the detail you put together. I mean, I think in general, this doesn't seem like we're going too exotic. It's like we're putting together a new building or something different than what we already have. So it's kind of a bare bones project is the way I've interpreted it, to basically get the job done, to get us up to I want to say code, but I don't know if that's the right word, but basically so that we're at least compliant from a seismic standpoint. That being said, I'm not exactly sure the best way that I would go about recommending or authorizing or suggesting we should finance it. I certainly feel that financing options are appropriate right now, given the rates are so low, historically low. I assume that's the same for the public as well as the private, because I know in the private, there's nothing that's as cheap as it is right now as money, almost. But I'm not exactly sure whether you would do 100% or you would make some buy down. I like the approach of some sort of payment up front, put some skin in the game, but it also maybe gets you more favorable rates and or would accelerate the speed at which you would pay something back or give you that flexibility. That being said, we better start figuring out how we're going to get this into the CIP. I did have a follow-on question. I mean, I think this in general will bring down our CIP budget, which right now contains a $7 million placeholder. So we're actually going to reduce it by $3.8 million, which I think everyone in town would be happy about. Now, I could be wrong if the CIP didn't include that $7 million number still, or does it still?
Well, I think our current balance is about $2 million, and our total need is about $16 million for 5 years.
Okay.
So we could lop off $3 million
Yeah.
out of 16.
It's gonna go down like $3 million bucks. We just found $3 million. This is wow, what a day. Anyways, that being said, those are monies that are projected, not necessarily committed until we decide to pull the trigger on such a project. So I mean, I'm in favor of that. I think I understand the design build concept versus the design bid build, and it seems like it's a more reasonable approach. From the standpoint of it gives us a little more control. I do worry that there's a commitment of resources internally that we may or may not necessarily have at our disposal, but I know that staff will be able to reconcile that. And I do think, as I said, let's at least continue to evaluate this project as we go forward, and the financing options, let's put a little money down and figure out how to get really cheap money going forward from there. I was going to make a comment, but you did, with regards to the timing of this and the way it might affect the local elementary school, especially if you're pulling lead-based paint items out of the windows. But it doesn't sound like that's going to be an option because you're going to do it during the summer. Thanks for that. So that's my general comment. Did I answer all three questions? I think
I believe you did, yes, thank you. Councilmember Mueller?
I think the most important thing is that it's important that we have a seismically safe building for people that come to town and our staff, and not necessarily in that order. So I think that this absolutely needs to be done. So I think there's still a lot of work to figure out exactly how we want to go about it. I certainly think the minimum project is better than the maximum project of 12 million, but let's see if we can really get this done in the $3 million range. I'm not going to certainly have much appetite when it starts creeping up. That always really bothers me. So I think anybody who, I just hope these numbers are pretty good estimates, because I think it's going to be tough to swallow when they're not. Also, with the when we start and how we get the money, I think those are pretty tough calls. I think we're going to have a lot to go through. I'm still just don't really know how to make a good decision about design, bid, build versus design, build. I mean, I think I've gotten some preliminary information, but I just I don't know the pros and cons of each one, and I think we're all a little nervous after the community center, and so I think we really want to, I certainly, and I think everyone else does too, really wants to get this right. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that before I wade in either or. It's all kind of new to me, and I just don't really know how to, I do appreciate that the staff is recommending design build, but I just need more information on that one. And in terms of the financing, I want to see lots of different options. If interest rates really skyrocket, then we want 100% financing for a long time. On the other hand, a 30-year debt is something that I really don't want to strap future councils with either, so I would like to pay it off very quickly. So as many options as possible, and I don't want any prepayment penalty, or I would like the prepayment option. So that is, our finances may or may not change, and this maybe is a priority to pay off versus some other thing we want to do in the CIP. I'd really like to get as much options there as possible. Also, with the hybrid, I definitely feel we want to put something down. 15 to 18% seems awful low to me. I would really like to put some more money down. If this is a priority and it's for safety, when we look at our CIP, I think it's important to kind of rank order that with everything else against safety. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes, I wish that I had remembered to ask how long the estimate is that it will take after construction starts, but I didn't think of that. But
If you'd like to ask that question of staff, feel free to do that.
okay.
They're telling me 4, so I'm projecting 6 months.
And the other consideration is that if this, it really wouldn't help out then to possibly use some of the school property for temporary office space.
If I will, that's a very good, we even talked about what if we all relocated at the community center, and we came up with the reality that that doesn't work, because then we're displacing all of the potential tenants, the special events, the recreation programming. And the same thing, we looked, but we can't, the window of the work that we need to do is not sufficiently solid that we could say, yes, go put us in a bunch of the schoolrooms for the year, we'll survive and be out in plenty of time. If I was the school superintendent and I came with my proposal, I go, that's nice try, Steve, but no.
I was just thinking about it.
No, we went through those.
Okay.
You went through, those are very good, we've had those discussions.
But I think that, the next steps are going to be important, and I feel comfortable with a design-build program, especially hearing that it might give us more control over, and better communication between the design parties and the construction parties. That's very important. And I think that while money is historically this low to borrow, that's one thing. I have one more question for you, and that is, on the debt service on the community center, how many years is that?
That one was 30 years.
That is 30 years. So, this has to be done because of the safety, and so I think the 15-year or whatever, 10-year, if it could be even that, would be the best way to go if we could, if the economy continues to provide funding that we could pay down the debt sooner. I'd be all for that. And I think that's the answer to the question.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I'll say quickly, I agree the minimum alternative is not only okay, but preferable. We obviously need a seismically safe building. We've talked about this as long as I've been on the council, I'm sure as long as you and all of us have been. I think that when we talked about the alternatives, you use the word nice to have. Most of those were, in my opinion, about just reasonable use of this building, and not anything that anybody would look at and say, wow, they just spent extra money because they wanted to. So I like that approach. In my opinion, financing is needed, and it's highly justifiable for a capital project like this. This is not the state of California or the federal government just borrowing money to do operating expenses and it's gone forever. So I think it's fine. Rates, as Councilmember Hall said, are historically low, so there's not a better time to do this. In my opinion, you talked about council prerogative. I do not think we should really wait that long, because you can't see where the future obviously is coming, and rates right now are just, it's the right time to do it. I think the bidding environment is still very positive, it would be my impression. I agree with a lot of the comments. I don't think we should do, nor do we need to do 100% financing. You guys have put I would call the 10 to 20% kind of down payment option somewhere in there. That to me seems reasonable. I do like the idea of a prepayment option. I'm not sure if there's a cost of that. If people price that in and you pay a little extra, hi kids. And I do like the shorter time frame on payoff. So I think that sounds like that's generally something that we want. I am totally comfortable with the design and build process. I am more comfortable with it because I see Leslie and PMI here, and going through every 2 weeks the process of the community center. I have confidence in you guys, so make sure that's well placed. And the same thing with our town attorney, who didn't help us write our original contracts. I trust that you're going to write a really good contract. And as Councilwoman Mueller said, realistic budgeting. You put $500,000 in. I'm glad to see that. I thought we had too low on the community center, and actually we did come in below that. We should have come in below that overall, but we had a couple other issues to deal with. But you've always been conservative, Steve, but dang it, be conservative. Make sure that, like you said, let's not get any surprises. So let's go.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll be very brief because most of my comments have already been shared. I support this alternative plan. I support the idea of some partial payment up front to reduce the financing, and I'm comfortable with the design build. I would like to see some level of council oversight. We can determine at some point how frequent that is. I think it's important that we monitor and just are aware. We're not going to micromanage. I speak for the council, not to micromanage the project, but for us to be aware of how our money is being spent, especially because there's a little bit of the on-the-fly component to this. And so, I'm fine with that. But I do think that we need to make this a priority. When we are looking at, hopefully we'll continue to look at overestimated revenues and how we're going to allocate those assets. I think we should make this a higher priority than we have been, because we have continued to cross our fingers and hope that we don't have a catastrophic event in this building. And I don't think that's fair to our staff, and I don't think it's fair to the public that comes in here. So I do think that we need to put this more in an urgent course. So it's good to see that we're addressing it now.
Thank you. With your feedback, I have a couple of thoughts and a couple of questions for you. One, I see we have pretty solid consensus that this is the preferred project, so we will go that approach. We will attempt to get you some additional background material and some case studies on design build and share that information with you, just to try to better understand the education process while we continue to start working on that. I'm also going to ask for your thought and feedback on two council ad hoc committees. One which would be during the construction, similar to what we had with the community center. I personally enjoyed that process. I think it's helpful, so I don't have a problem with it. The second would actually be two council members that will assist in and consult with as we develop and meet on the financing structures. So with your thoughts, that might be a way to go, so that when we're looking at that, because there are a range of financing, and not only your interest in a shorter term, how do we do that, but even just staff's preliminary looked at some.
So the plan is you'll bring back that information,
back
and at that point we'll make those determinations about potential ad hoc.
The question is that of interest to the council? If it's not, I won't, but if there's interest in those two committees, then we will put them on a future agenda item. Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and say that, yes, there's interest on those two committees, and so let's go that direction. I also think that we want to just remember the historical integrity component here as we're discussing this, and whether we have some third party that's able to evaluate some of the key components, or if you've already done that. Just I mentioned that it's just something not to be overlooked, certainly.
And just so the public's comfortable, Mayor, I think that's a very good footnote, and that's also why ARG, or what's known as Architectural Resource Group, was initially selected by the Town Council. As you may recall, they have a strong track record of a practice that is on the functional adaptation of historical and older buildings into current needs. That was what led us to ultimately select them. So
do we have an anticipated time when, so if the public is paying attention, when we really have some solid decisions ahead of us to make, that they have the ability to be paying attention. Do we know when this is coming back?
Well, the next steps will be coterminous, but we will be working on finalizing this, shaping up the design bid qualification package and working with legal and our package to bring that together, and then also during that period, working on our financing
So are we thinking weeks or months?
months.
Okay. So
Quick.
sometime this summer, potentially.
Sometime this summer. Again, I do want to point out, as Graham and Oliver mentioned, the goal would be to be in construction this time next year, just as school is wrapping up. So that sounds like a long way off, but with the work we have to do securing it, it's going to be an aggressive, but staff believes it's a reasonable schedule. I wish I could guarantee that the project would probably be complete before school resumed, but given the fact that they seem to start earlier in August every year, in fact, I'm waiting to find out that they start on July 29th or something like that. But we do think we can do the most, some of the nastiest demolition work during that time period, and then when school resumes, will be more of a putting the building back together.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, we're going to move on now to agenda item 11, staff informational reports, and I know we do have one on our information technologies. Do we have an update that we want to just review?
All right, this is a challenging conversation for me. I want to remind the council that staff informational reports are really there for your information and for you
Fair
to
enough.
ask questions if you have them.
Are there
So-
any questions about the update on the IT report?
No.
Nope.
Seeing none, we're going to move right on to item 12, council member meeting reports. We'll start with reports before we move on to comments. So I will start with the Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District meeting that happened today. The only item was a closed session item, so there's nothing to report there. Were there any other meetings since our last meeting that people attended and need to report out on? If not, are there any council comments? Councilor Moeller is reaching for the microphone.
I just want to comment on the, first on the garage sale. I had a great time. I bought a few things that I don't need, so, and I walked all over town. So everybody was having a great time, and generally the comment I found most interesting was they said, this stuff I sold first thing didn't even sell last year. So that means something, but I don't know what it is. But that was pretty incredible. A lot of people told me that. A lot of people out and about. And also, our town cleanup day is Saturday morning. So you got to get your stuff out on the curb on Friday night. And you can check Yountville next door. Councilmember Chilton gave you all the details of who to call for a large item and how that works. So looking forward to another fun community event, only as Yountville can do.
Thank you.
No.
Comments, Councilmember
I was
Dornbecker?
going to ask if Councilmember Mueller wanted to talk about the Friends of the Library meeting at all, not this time?
Yeah, we could definitely do that. There's some, would you like to do that?
No,
Okay.
please.
Well, I think our Yountville Library Commissioner will be here for a more formal announcement, but the Yountville Friends of the Library has agreed to donate 25 Kindles, and we're following the hall plan, as it's known. We're reaching out for a total of 100 volunteers with the goal of having the library open for 40 hours. So these 25 Kindles will be given out to the first 25 people who go through the process and start actually volunteering at the library. So they're going fast. I've already got a list with 13 people's names. So go to the library, give me a call, give Councilmember Dornbecker a call or an email, and let us know if you'd like to do that and fill out the volunteer form. And we're pretty excited about getting our library open again.
And you are having them volunteer before you give them the Kindle, right?
We're working on the process, yes.
Okay.
It's the volunteer portion's a little, the application is not quick and simple, so, but they will be actually working during their doing some volunteer service before we hand out any incentives, rewards.
I wanted to thank the Friends of the Library very much for that generous offer, and also to thank Councilmember Moeller and Commissioner Conchilian for the work that they've done and that we've done together.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, any comments?
Only comment, just to follow up on what Councilwoman Mueller said. If we have the free cleanup day this Saturday, but if you have a large item like an old refrigerator or an old dishwasher, which I just replaced my dishwasher, they will pick those up for free, but they do charge the disposal fee, which I think is $16. And you do need to call ahead because they have a special truck that comes and gets that. So I think usually it's $50 or $75 to have that picked up, so it's still a great deal. But do call Upper Valley Disposal Service, whose number I don't have in front of me, to talk to them about that.
On their website.
And it's on their website.
Great, thank you. The two comments I wanted to make, and I know this is fairly breaking news, and Sergeant Belmer is not here, but I did want to just acknowledge the fact that he is being promoted to lieutenant. So we want to say congratulations to soon-to-be Lieutenant Belmer, and we look forward to having him come back here at future meetings so we can congratulate him directly. The other thing I wanted to mention is the upcoming Memorial Day services. There is, as every year, a long list of activities that hopefully our residents and visitors will participate and enjoy. Cemetery cleanup will be Saturday, May 19th at 8 a.m., so that would be this Saturday. There will be the posting of colors at the Veterans Home Cemetery on Saturday, May 26th at 8 a.m. The Boy Scouts will be there for posting of the colors. Then on Sunday, May 27th, decoration of the cemetery at 4 p.m., and the public is invited to bring flowers and greenery for part of that cemetery decoration. The watchfire will be lit Sunday evening, the 27th at 7 p.m., where they'll be serving, it looks like, quite a bit of sugar, cookies and beverages. That's to make sure that everybody can stay awake for the night to keep watch of the fire. Then, as is such a great privilege for our entire community and an honor to participate in, is the Memorial Day ceremony at the Veterans Home Cemetery, Monday, May 28th, starting at 10 a.m. So just a reminder for everyone to please make it up and participate and remember all those that have served our country. With that, we have some future agenda items as they are listed here. We do have a couple closed session items to go into after this. Do we anticipate any reportable action in those closed sessions?
No, we do not.
Very well. Then we're looking for a motion to adjourn, which is to our next budget work session, which is, we're using Roman numerals, I believe, at this point to identify how many budget sessions we've had. It'll be at 1:30 on Wednesday, May 23rd, and then our next regular council meeting will be Tuesday, June 5th at 6 p.m. So if we have a motion, actually, we won't need the motion yet. We're going into closed session first. But thank you all for watching, and if you'd like to hold on, we'll be back in a few minutes.